Hey, good morning. Today I've got Brett and Mark from MB Test Partners. They've been my clients for a while. Awesome people. It's great to have two people joining the podcast this morning. Love to share the journey that they've been through. It's an amazing journey to where they're at. And they've got some really great stories to tell where they're from and where they're at the moment. I know them pretty well, so I can't wait to do the sessions.
Welcome to IT Mastermind Talks. Your access to insights and experiences from thought leaders in the IT services industry and those that support the industry. Our podcast features not only the seasoned professionals charting their start to exit journey, but also the key contributors who help ensure their success. We delve into the diverse challenges encountered within the IT services realm, encompassing both professional hurdles and personal obstacles. Join us, be part of our growing community and engage in the conversation. Hosted by Ian Markram of LoadingGrowth.
Brett and Mark, welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Ian. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, fantastic. So today I'm going to start off with Brett because he's my on the left-hand side of my screen on the podcast on YouTube. I'm going to start off with Brett. And Brett, as I mentioned earlier on today, we really want to showcase, where did people start out? How did they get involved in the IT industry? We do IT software companies and we do IT services companies. You are predominantly a services organization, IT services organization. You target large enterprise and you solve some big problems there around that. And you obviously get paid accordingly to solve those problems. And as I always say when I coach, the bigger the problem you solve, the more people will tend to pay for that. So you do solve a huge problem there. And that's why you guys are going gangbusters. So Brett, let's talk a bit about your background, where you grew up. You're obviously Sydney based. I see you guys all the time, but where did you grow up in Sydney?
Yeah, so I was born at Bankstown in Sydney, Bankstown Hospital, and we used to actually live in a housing commission house in Villawood. So that's my background. My mum and dad lived with my grandparents. My grandfather actually worked for South Sydney Council as a garbo. He used to drive the garbage and cleaning truck. And
Wow.
My grandmother worked at Bankstown Hotel pulling beers. So that's sort of the background of the family.
And for people from overseas, what is Bankstown listening for? What's the social?
Well, yeah, look, it's sort of a lower, back then it was certainly a lower socioeconomic area.
Yep.
A lot of immigrants, would live there. Villawood, it was sort of always, I guess, the detention centre and places like that it's been known for lately.
Yep.
But back then it was a real working class area, is sort of where it was in the housing commission house we're in. My dad was actually conscripted to Vietnam, so he was over there, and I was born actually while he was in the field. So it's sort of an interesting sort of background, right? So where I came from. Eventually, fast forward a few years, my dad got a war service home, and get this, he had a choice of Mount Druitt, North Rocks, or Warrawee were the three areas he had a choice from. So people who know Sydney, they're all very, very different. They're very different areas. And he put his name down for Mount Druitt because they're from the western suburbs, and that seemed to be the best place. By the time it got to him, all the Mount Druitt houses were gone. So he had to choose something else. So it was either Warrawee, which is, St Ives, Turramurra area, or North Rocks. And he chose Warrawee because there was a train station. Anyway, so that's where we ended up moving. I went to school up that way. And what's interesting is all throughout my school years, I played a lot of sport. I was not very good at English or those history subjects, but I was always a maths guy, is what I really did. And I wanted to be a dentist, actually. So when I look back in my year 12 annual, what was I going to be? I was going to be a dentist. Wow. Anyway, luckily for me, I didn't get into dentistry. And then I remember talking to my dad. He was in insurance and worked in an office. And this is back in 87. And he said, these computers are sort of taking off. I think you should, they might be the future. You should look at doing IT. So I went to uni, went to Sydney Uni and I did a Bachelor of Science, but majored in computer science and pure maths. Was my background. So that's sort of where I got to, how I got into computers, a bit by accident.
For sure.
but I did study IT, really.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's just pause you there so we give Mark a bit of a go as well, the duo act. Just, a bit of a hard upbringing there, Brett. I've spoken about it personally. I've had a hard upbringing myself, and it drives people, I believe. It's a big driving force to keep people motivated, and people still don't understand why I work. And I think it's down to one of the core principles I've had is you got to work really hard to be at the top, and we've come from such a low position at the bottom of the food chain, if you want to say it, that it's natural for keeping working. I presume that's partially for you as well. Do you think that's the case, Brett?
Yeah, I think it is. I think what it does just grounds you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
You sort of know, and you see how hard it is for people to work, and because not everybody's as lucky as we are, and you sort of see that. And I think what it does, it just makes you realize how lucky we are. One, to get an education, right? But two, to be able to work in an area that does, pay well. And also, I've had the privilege of working overseas, traveled the world, so I've lived in Hong Kong, Singapore, and those things, right? Which none of my grandparents or really have the opportunity to do.
Okay, great. We're going to pause you there. We're going to get back to where your travels led you just now. Let's get on to the other superstar, Mark. Mark, where did you grow up, and how did
I'm
you
not
get?
sure I've got the same kind of sad story that Brett's got, but the hard road of hard knocks. But look, I grew up in the Southern Shire boy. For those in Sydney, you know what that means. So there was a lot of, let's say, similar cultural background. So it wasn't as mixed as say Villawood, where Brett grew up, or Bankstown. I went to the local primary school. My parents were strictly middle class. Was a manager in a security company, as a sales guy, and a qualified accountant. Very big on education in our family to try to get ahead. So we were definitely battlers. And in my neighbourhood, everyone had the same type of house. You had a red or a cream brick one. You had a Ford or a Holden car out the front. The kids would play out the street and get bindies in your feet, and in summer, and all that kind of good stuff. So it was a pretty good upbringing. And then similar to Brett, we valued education. So mum and dad had been saving for most of their life to put me into a good high school, and my sister. So that was always a common theme. And you've touched on working hard, and Brett mentioned being grounded. So definitely being grounded, coming from that kind of background. There wasn't a lot of money going around back in the day, and then with the education, you appreciated being given that opportunity.
Sure.
And I think that kind of value, it was a privilege to get to go to a school where you had to pay extra money and get focused. And we played a lot of sport, like Brett mentioned, so it was a bit more of a rounded education. It wasn't all just purely academic. But I think about that really laid the foundation of my entire life. It's probably similar to how Brett's described it, and maybe yourself, Ian.
For sure.
So that work ethic, I think I've always had a job since I can remember, since I was 12 or 13. So I think the legal age in Australia is 14 and 9 months, and I know that. So I've known that since I was 14 and 9 months. And I think at least be proud to say I've always had a job. So again, that was just another common theme in our family was you work hard, you save money, you get a good education, and you try to make the best of your life.
Yeah, nice. That's great. Great to hear that, Mark. You guys are a fantastic company, and I know a lot about it on the inside, obviously, that we're not going to share that too much, but I know you guys are successful, and it's awesome that you got a successful story from where you guys have come from. So let's get back into Brett. Let's get him, you've done your university, and what happened after that, Brett?
Yeah, so when I came out of uni, I'm going to guess it was about 92. 92, and that was the recession we had to have. And so it was quite hard. So before that, there were heaps of IT jobs, and all of a sudden jobs were hard to find. So I actually applied for 127 jobs. I sort of, back then there was no internet, right? So per se, so you had to apply, you had to buy the paper, right? And apply to companies and right away, like write a real letter.
Yeah.
So I did that. So I kept a log of everything I applied for and got all the rejection letters and everything like that. So standard, IBM, all these companies I was applying for.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting a job as a computer programmer, a C+ programmer.
Yeah.
For an actuarial company. So a small actuarial company. And I used to write the software for essentially actuarial models to to demonstrate sort of life insurance and superannuation modelling at different interest rates. So this is, back in the early 90s there, when a lot of, super was coming in, the disclosure of commissions and all that. So I did that for a while. And it was while I was doing that, I sort of discovered testing, really. Was I a good programmer? Not really. I think I was average, personally. There were much better people than me. But I used to enjoy the testing of the software, and the other developers hated the testing.
Yeah.
So essentially, I said to them, look, why don't you write my code, and I'll just test all the code. I'll just do the testing. And that's sort of where it all started, really, because I didn't really enjoy the coding, and they hated the testing. So we sort of did a bit of a swap, and that's where I sort of got into testing, really.
Yeah.
And started enjoying it, and things like that. Now, I had a go after that at, I worked at Osborne Computers for a while, and had that a go. I was like a management trainee consultant there, very young. I gave that a go, but didn't really enjoy it. And then that was only a couple of years, then moved back into testing. And then started working as, I guess, I was telling Mark a story before. So throughout my whole career, I've only ever worked for another test manager for 3 hours in my, 30 years or whatever it is. So I started work for somebody, and then started at 9, and then at 12 o'clock, she told me that she was leaving, and she'd hired me to take over.
Brilliant.
So I became the test manager after 3 hours, and I've sort of led testing teams ever since, really. And so this is, back in the 90s.
Great.
That I started that. And that was at TAFE, actually.
Yeah.
I used to work at TAFE, and still to this day, it's probably one of the best groups of, I guess, best run programs I've worked with. There are some really good senior people who knew what they were doing.
Yep.
And it was an excellently led sort of program. The leaders there had hired sort of some really good contractors in, project managers and the like. And we used to write all the student information systems, and I ran the testing there.
Yeah, brilliant. So that's hell of interesting. So for those people, we should have started out, and my bad is you guys run an awesome testing company. So hence, Brett was talking about testing. When my heyday, when I was a consultant, so I could do a bit of coding, not great. I could do workshops fairly well. I could bring everything together. But the worst thing of all was the testing. So it's like no one wants to test. So obviously that's, it gives you the opportunity to rise above and take an opportunity that no one wanted. So that's good. So I want to go a bit further. After that, Brett, how did you, I know a bit more of your story to get to MB Test Partners. Can you just carry on a little bit more of a story of how you got to MB Test Partners? And then we'll flick over to Mark.
So I'd been working as a contractor. I then essentially moved over to Singapore, worked for Barcap. I got into banking and was running testing teams there. So I worked in Singapore for a few years. I then worked at Macquarie Bank for about 4 years, sort of ran testing for a big part of the organization there. And then eventually I moved to JP Morgan, and I was there for 6 years living in Hong Kong, and I was the global head of testing there. So I did lots of, primarily equities and prime brokerage and things like that. But I had quite a big team of about 300 people, a lot of people based in India, but all around the world, London, Glasgow, Chicago, Houston, New York.
For sure.
And so I sort of got into banking, and I'd been in that until probably about 2016. So let's say we did banking for I did it for, 12, 13 years.
Yep.
And to be fair, it was just getting a bit hard. The hours were extremely long.
Yeah.
And by that stage, I'd moved back to Sydney, and I was running a global team. So I was probably working till 3 a.m. every day. So every sort of morning, I guess.
Yeah.
So it was pretty brutal, the hours. The work was good. The people were good, like super motivated. But it was at that stage that I thought, look, I think I've just had enough of the hours. And I left. And then I picked up a contract working at Transport for New South Wales as their test director on an SAP program. Now, I couldn't even spell SAP, let alone know what it was back then.
Yep.
And that's where I sort of got into it. And in fact, that's where I met Mark. So we met on the same program, and the program was in a bit of trouble. There was a lot of fighting on the program.
Yep.
And I was on, let's say, the left-hand side, and Mark is on the right-hand side of the project. And we basically brought a lot of the program together.
Yep.
At the testing phase, right? And we sort of the project ended up being successful and going live. But that's essentially where we met on the program, working for the opposite sides of the program. And that's where MB was sort of formed, really, from that project, where we just sat down and said, well, I think we could actually do this together.
Yeah.
As a business. But that's where SAP really came in. So we hadn't done anything with it before, but we knew testing back to front. So that's what we knew, right? So we were testing professionals. We knew that. And then to add in the domain expertise of SAP and the product expertise, and try to bring our banking backgrounds to that. Great. So that's sort of where MB was formed, really out of Transport for New South Wales.
So running a global team of 300 people, that's a lot of people for banking. I know a few people that work quite heavily in the banking community myself, and I know obviously it's banking, so hell of important to get the testing right,
Yeah, absolutely.
If the money ends up the wrong account, or you know what I mean, or something happens, it's hard to get back.
So we had a defect. So when I was at ParkCap, I remember I was in Singapore, and I got a phone call, and there was a big FX system was one of the ones that we worked on, automated trading system. And we got a phone call to say that a wrong rate had been used. Instead of the GBP USD rate, they used a USD yen rate. And so that's like 100 times worse, if you look at the rate. And essentially what had happened, the bank had lost $600 million on the trade. Wow. Now, the numbers, this is back in, I guess, 2005 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So 600 million. It's still a lot of money, but it was a hell of a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And so we had to effectively shut down the system, because there was all automated trading that went off to try and cover the position and everything like that. And at the time, we're in Singapore, and I was sort of the one who knew the system the best. So the traders called me and literally said, what do we do? And you sort of wake up pretty quick when someone throws that at you. So we did that, and then we found the problem. We're able to unwind the position because of how the trades were done. But still, you get these bugs. It's just got to be right, and it's got to be exact. Now, it's not always exact. Like that showed, there are bugs, but they're just hard to find.
Yeah.
And so that's what the view, right? Testing. It's trying to mitigate the risk and take away those really dumb errors that creep in that people miss.
Yeah.
There's always going to be super complicated defects and things like that happen that you can't replicate due to timings or whatever. But, the main thing is, try and get it as good as possible in the time you've got.
For sure. So it's a hell of interesting. People skimp on testing and change management on these large programs at enterprise level. I've been there myself, as you guys know, and it shows up 6 months to maybe a year later, even, once it's gone live, because there's a certain unique series of steps will make something happen, and you only find out at the end. And sometimes you don't really find out, to be honest. You only find out if it could have actually happened 10 times, and then on the 11th time, someone might have picked up that error, and then you unwind it and you go back and you're, oh my God, it's been happening since go live, maybe once a month, or something to that effect. It's quite interesting how that happens, because there's always those different use cases that are unique with the combination of things. So that's pretty interesting. Brett, let's flick over to Mark now. Mark, let's cover your sort of state from uni onwards to MBTS partners.
Yep. So look, at university, I started off studying accountancy and decided pretty quickly that wasn't the right path for me. So then I switched over. I was doing economics and law with a commerce degree. And I've always felt like, for me at university, it was just a stepping stone. I really wanted to get into the big boy workforce and start making my way in life. So it was, I spent 4 years at uni doing the double major and switching degrees. And the last year I actually worked part-time for an insurance company. And I was trying to get into finance. And back in the day, as Brett mentioned, it was a massive recession, probably the last great recession we've had in Australia, if not the world. So it was a bit of a battle, and the way I got that job was bit roundabout, they used to have the Commonwealth Employment Service, which was an office with little job cards where if you're unemployed, you would walk in there if motivated and look at the job card to try to find a job. And one of my other mates had graduated a year earlier, and I went down and picked him up in my car, which was falling apart, and we went down to the CES and we're looking for a job for him. And he wasn't really interested. He was looking for a management role, and no one's going to give a 21-year-old a management role straight off the bat. So he actually decided there and then in the CES office that he'd go back to university, do a master's degree, whilst I'd found a job card at an insurance company. So I went to got the job interview. I got the job at the insurance company at Milson's Point, and I started off as a marketing assistant. And I think within 6 weeks, I was so good at the marketing assistant's role, they put me in to become a junior debt collector. Wow. And that was an experience when you start ringing insurance agents asking for their commission back. There was a clawback system if their insurance policy fell over within the first 2 years. So I kind of was mixing with used car dealers and all kinds of great shysters of the world. But again, well, these things make you. So I never forgot that, and it hards you up. I was a boy from the burbs and hadn't really worked in an office environment, so you learn pretty quickly and from that kind of role, I'd always wanted to get into finance because the generation I grew up with, a lot of people were motivated by being the next Gordon Gekko, to being on that Wall Street type, making their millions and billions and dreaming of the big dreams. So I was no different. And my way into that finance world was through IT, through testing.
Yep.
So after about a year at the insurance company, I couldn't take it any further. I'd moved into customer service, and that was definitely the last straw, having to hear people ring up about their insurance products and how they were underinsured, overinsured, wanted their money back, all those kind of, again, great grounding in life. And I got given a role at Commonwealth Investments, CBA Investments they were called, and they were putting in a computer system to manage all their money. It was an internal fund manager, and they had relatively just mainly bonds and cash. I think some bond-like equities that were paying dividends. And so that's where I cut my teeth on testing. And I can remember after the first week, I rang up the recruitment agent because I was a casual back then. Yeah. And I said, look, can you get me out of this? I really hate it. And she goes, yep, absolutely. And then I waited for a week and I didn't hear her back. And then I waited, gave her a call. She didn't return my call. And after a month of being there, I just knew I was stuck in the job, and I just made the best of it. And that was my first project at about 21 years old. And I it's been a tough life ever since that. I look back at that, and it was in disarray. It did go live, but they replaced it as soon as they went live with another system a couple of years later. And again, we've been in business in this world, this industry, for 30 years, and there's a lot of I don't know. Some things haven't changed. I guess it's a lot of circular.
It's amazing. It's amazing that hasn't changed. Like, I was speaking to one of my other clients. So I started doing my SAP ERP rollouts back in 96, 97, like really long time ago. And the process is still the same. It hasn't changed much. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of different type of people in our industry. I mean, there's academics, there's people that love to, in testing, they're called practice leads, people more administrative type individuals, and they look for resourcing and manage the teams and all that kind of stuff. And then you've got your hardcore delivery people. And I personally, I think I always wanted to test myself against the best. So I was in delivery. That was the hardest job. And then like Brett, I traveled the world, and I worked in a lot of countries, mainly all in banking. So worked for Deutsche Bank, Credit Suisse, UBS. I worked for the Singapore Stock Exchange. I was in Tokyo, New York, Luxembourg, Zurich twice, London. I mean, it all sounds wonderful, but when you're over there, you literally you give your life and your soul for a few coins of silver and work at long hours.
For sure.
And that kind of, what lays the foundations for the future in your life is the success that we're now seeing in our company.
For sure, 100%. I was about to say that, you're only successful now because you've been through so many different scenarios, so many permutations, so many characters who you're arguing against to try and, say, hang on, we haven't done the testing properly. and take the pressure as well. Because the pressure, as you guys, we're going to talk a bit about that later on. You guys are in the pressure component where the big SIs are trying to get the project live because they fix price a certain component of it, and you guys are trying to keep the client, as in the real client, keep them, online with a great product at the end, making sure it's working, and you're liable for that as well. So we're going to talk a bit about that, and that'll be after we talked about how you guys got together with the company. But it's such a unique situation that you guys in, and you can only do it if you've got these years of experience that well. So hence that, it's part of the reason why it's a successful business is because you guys have done it for so long.
Yep.
And you've done it on a global stage. So well done. Now let's just quickly go back to you guys. You got on a project at New South Wales Transport, a big SAP implementation,
Yep.
one of the biggest at the time in the country. And you've obviously were working on different sides of the implementation. What did you guys do? Did you just have a coffee? How did you actually come up with MBT? Well, I know the story, but it's quite interesting. Did you have a coffee? Did you argue about something and realize you're the same, same two fish in the same pond, or what did you do?
So
How'd you start?
yeah, I want to just jump in here a little bit, Brett. So from my perspective,
Yeah.
we were both brought in to help save the program.
Yeah.
I think Brett will tell you in a minute, but he was either the third or fourth test director. I was similar. I was on the RMS side. So the program was all about insourcing or moving from RMS and all the satellite transport portfolio into a head office, Transport for New South Wales shared service. So it was like a hub and a spoke system where they were moving it all, one SAP instance into a bigger SAP instance. So I was on the outside and Brett was on the inside. And I think I had a month on start on him, and we were basically told by our own program directors, you guys need to be talking. The program's not really at any level talking, and so we need you guys to sit together. And so one of my many stories about Brett when we first met was we agreed that we'd sit on, we'd share a desk. But what I didn't realize with Brett's idea of sharing a desk was he would continue to have a big long desk, and I would sit at the very end on the little thin bit, and I'd have a laptop, and so Brett would have 95% of the desk, and I would just have that 5%.
Did Brett have like 3 screens and you had one little laptop? What happened?
Correct.
Oh
He absolutely had 3
I
screens.
also had TV, Ian. I had this huge TV behind me that I'd put the stats up. So yeah, I did.
Every day the stats, you put the stats up in progress of the tests being done. Yeah.
But Mark did have 5% of the desk, and so I thought that was quite generous of me.
Yeah.
Well, that was good. So how did you get to the point of actually starting or thinking about starting?
So
talk us through that process.
So the spark that lit the flame of MB Test Partners, we both had to do a joint presentation to a town hall, to the whole program, and they rented out a transport. They got a huge office, like a meeting room that can hold 150, 200 people. And so in preparation, we had our notes, and we eventually got called up, and we're standing up in front of everyone about to give a wonderful presentation on testing. And I would normally joke about, if you can't sleep, then let me talk to you about testing. So, and then my personality just got the better of me, and I just introduced myself as the test director in charge of the RMS side, and I said I'm the younger, better looking test director in case you get confused. And then straight away Brett jumped in, and he said he was the older and smarter test director at Transport. And I think at that moment we just knew that we'd be mates, and that there was something there for us together, and then Brett can tell the rest of the story about over the next preceding 2 or 3 months, we were coming up with ideas and talking about forming something.
Right. Brett, would you like to jump in there?
Yeah. So a lot of it was, I think the good thing about Transport is we had some really good leaders around us. So some of the people that were running the program and doing various jobs, I think looking back on it now, they were exceptionally good. And they knew what they're doing. And they're some of the best people in the whole industry, I think, certainly at SAP. So we were lucky to have, I guess, you get luck in life, and we fell into that project. I think the other thing is because we'd been through a similar background of banking, we sort of knew we both had a really good work ethic, and so we would work hard. Right? So there was no question, if it needed to be done, we both worked hard and did whatever it took. But then while we're sitting there, Mark's, obviously up the other end of the desk, and we're talking, it was literally like there are all these other people we knew in the industry who had started testing companies, and they were salespeople, or they weren't hardcore delivery people like we were.
Mhm.
And we just thought, well, you always say, well, how hard can it be? Maybe we should have a go at it,
Yeah.
right? We see all these other companies do it. But we thought the advantage we had is that we'd literally been to, back then, 20 years of hardcore delivery each. So we'd done the jobs, we'd done testing, we'd done test management, written test strategies, led teams. So we'd actually done that. So we felt we had a really big advantage over a lot of our competitors in
Mm.
that either of us could jump in and do any work, but we knew what all our team were going to do. We knew the processes, we knew the governance. So we just felt like we had an advantage, and we always wanted to stay within our swim lane, if you like, right? We knew it was testing. We then knew it was SAP, and we knew there was a big gap in the market. And so we just thought, let's just stick to that. And
Yeah.
that's sort of what started it all, really. And look, you go back 9-10 years ago when we started. I think we started in 2016, August of 2016. So, 9 odd years ago. And, it's tough. It's tough at first, right? Where do you get your first jobs from? What do you do? And we both work, I guess, on the tools, so to speak. So we both did delivery, both ran programs. But what we decided is we'd specialize in sort of that test governance, test management. So not so much the execution per se.
Yeah.
We sort of drive that, the governance and strategy across the SAP programs. And as you said, working for the client to ensure those big SIs, the Accentures, Deloitte, KPMG, DXC, all those big companies, IBM, that we hold them accountable to the quality of their delivery, and they deliver when they say they're going to deliver.
For sure.
So that's being transparent in our reporting and all those things, right? So that's
Yeah.
what we decided. This is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And we started it out. And look, it didn't, it's slow to start, right? These things are hard because you don't necessarily have the reputation. Nobody knows who you are. They might overseas. I think the thing was, because we were both overseas, we had incredible networks outside of Australia, and we had a lot bigger jobs than I think a lot of test directors in Australia because we'd worked overseas. But coming back to Australia, maybe our networks weren't quite as strong as other people.
Yep.
Because we'd been out of the country. And so it took a while to sort of build that up. And that was part of this SAP sort of little mafia we found ourselves in.
Yep.
It is quite a unique and sort of a closed group of people, right, who have got that SAP experience. So that's sort of where we started. We did a few other programs. We did a O365 program, a transport as well. So we did that. So we did a few different things, but that started out with testing that, making sure. But we've always stuck to that testing.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that was sort of the
So
transport project.
That was your vision, basically. We just talk about, because one of the questions I always ask is, when you start something, sometimes that vision moves on and changes, either with technology or businesses change or something else that you're servicing. But that core that you spoke about, Brett, is still relevant and still your vision today, isn't it?
Yeah, we haven't changed. I think I'd say, in fact, we've hardly changed, right? We've stuck.
So the lesson learnt, Brett, when you say is that every time we've taken a step outside of that core, away from the vision, it hasn't been for better. It's actually been for the detriment of the company and ourselves. So we've learned to take that step back and stick to our knitting, stick to our core, which is SAP, test governance and management.
Yeah, because it is.
Sorry, go for it, Brett.
It always seems easy. You think, let's get bigger, let's do something else, right? But every time we, as Mark said, we step outside our area of expertise, it's hard. It's really hard. And what we find is we do know our area well, and if we stick to that, we're successful.
Yeah.
And that's what we decided, and it's exactly what's played out.
So it's so important when I talk to clients, and so what I liked about you guys, when I spoke to you guys initially, I remember I was overseas and had the call with you guys, and I went, these are the guys I can work with because they are famous for something. They're niche. They know what they're doing. They can deliver. So, and you can attract your opportunities as well, because when you deliver, the referrals come in as well naturally, and you build a good rapport, and you've got a great team. So, and I always say to people, don't try and do everything, because if you try and be something to everyone, you won't have enough people to actually know they have the depth to solve a problem to get paid for at the end of the day. And you won't really be able to solve the problem properly. So Yeah, I think it's a prime thing that you guys have, stuck your knitting. Your visions are still the same since 2016. I think you're roughly about 50 staff. Is that correct?
Yeah, we go up and down. Look,
Yeah.
because we do projects, right? We do projects. Projects come and go, and they last sometimes for 1 year. Some go for 3.5 years.
Yeah.
But the team is generally, we'll say, somewhere between 18 and 30,
Yeah.
depending on the, you know, but it might be 25, 26, and then it goes up to 30. But just depends on the project. But we've never been bigger than that at all.
Yeah.
And I think there's a real tipping point once you get bigger than that, right? It starts getting harder to deliver. But the one thing we've managed to do, and this is sort of one of the goals early, is that Mark and I have moved out of the hands-on delivery
For sure.
so that we provide that leadership and governance across the projects.
Very
So
important.
we can make sure we're consistent, make sure the quality of delivery is good, make sure that if required, we can step in. And look, things don't always go perfect. Projects don't always work. People don't always work out for whatever reason. People have got stuff going on in life.
For sure.
And so, on a couple of occasions, Mark or I have had to step in.
Mm.
That's part of what we do. We sort of give a guarantee to all our clients that if something goes wrong, we will be there
For sure.
and we'll fix it for them.
Important. So, Mark, when I initially engaged you guys, you were hands-on, and then you decided to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and make sure that you get the governance across these big programs of work. You guys were doing the strategy work at that stage. Let's just talk, Mark, through what you say is a normal implementation or ideal implementation for you guys. What does that look like from your side?
It's interesting because look, we have let's say a core or a general way that we've learnt, the MB test way we're calling it now. It's evolved over the last 9-10 years, working together and working with some great people. So what tends to happen is we'll look back and understand which platform SAP that we're going to be running the testing on. So whether it's S4 HANA versus a SuccessFactor platform. As Brett mentioned, we do APA. What's it called? The Workday product as well, and we've done some other products. So again, we adjust our current IP to suit the client and to suit every program, because they are individually different, even though it's consistently like an SAP program. So what are the core things? Would be absolutely, we start off with a plan on a page. What's the high level vision from a testing perspective for the program?
Mm-hmm.
I've seen Brett literally win a client in an hour or two on a board, writing up a plan on the page for a $100 million program. And I was impressed. I think the whole 20 people in the room were impressed. He basically solved their go live strategy and their delivery strategy and then testing strategy in a 2-hour session. And obviously we won the work and the job off the back of that. That's what we do. And so we do that every program, whether it be on a whiteboard in front of 20 people or in a dark room by ourselves or with our test directors now who run these programs for us. So we've effectively moved into more of a training and uplifting our team, where we empower them. And I think the wording that we're using is provide guide rails into this is the way we do it, and then you have a level of flexibility to adjust and make changes depending on the program and the people and all those different facets of a program.
For sure, but your staff are all senior, I've got to say.
Yeah, look, we're probably we on purpose. We look for people that have got life experience that are not new to the game. We're looking for people that have had to work in hard programs like myself and Brett. I guess we've realised that's been very valuable, those 20 or 30 years of experience. So absolutely, our senior leadership team, many of our test managers are all between 40 to 60 plus years old. They've been there, done that. They've seen it. They know how to sort out and fix problems.
Yeah, and I think that model you go to market with, which has been hugely successful in the guardrails, you can do that because you don't have juniors on board. You know what I mean? Like you're not getting guys from graduation and come along and do the thing. So you can deliver something about that, and I think it's been successful for you guys. Really, well, it has been. Yeah.
Absolutely, but I think we're also, so Brett we haven't mentioned it yet in this, but we do actually want to give back to the industry. We actively look at ways and means. So whether it be talking at a testing conference, attending a testing tools conference, or just meeting people at these conferences without having to be the presenters. But we also have on purpose hired 3 junior people, and we train them up, and we get them primarily involved in testing tools administration. And we've got
Nice.
some people that are learning on our test automation tools that we now have a lot of clients. Our business has evolved, and they've asked for, beyond the test management, test governance, can you also supply some test automation? So we want to automate our test cases. So we have a small team of about 4 people at the moment and growing, and where we do a lot of automation. And so we've been very big on it in giving people their breaks. So
Yeah.
I think we both look back at our lives and we go, we just needed someone to give us a chance and encourage us. And so I think currently we have got either 3, maybe 4 people now, also in the junior ranks and one of them's actually going to transition next year into being a defect manager, and the next step will be a test manager. So there is a career path now that we're building within our company for junior staff and even for the senior staff, that we move them around doing different types of test management.
Great. Now I'm going to go shoot on to Brett there. Give you a moment there to relax there, Mark. Brett talked about automation tools. We've spoken that, I can remember having a couple of workshops on that with you guys. What's the automation tools out there like at the moment, and are they getting better with everything?
Okay, so automation's an interesting topic. So remember, testing has got a lot of theoretical people in it. There's a lot of theoretical discussion online around testing, about how it should be done, how it shouldn't be done. I think there's nothing beats real hard practical experience that somebody's got to be delivered by a certain date. Okay, and I think that's what a lot of people forget. Everyone wants to be theorists, but actually running programs is completely different. So automation, I think is just rarely been successful in organizations. And test automation has been around, would it be 20 years? At least 20 years. I've been doing test automation, well back then.
Yeah.
But it's rarely, the ROI on automation is rarely successful, because people think it's a silver bullet, and they just say, let's just get someone to automate it, and we'll automate it straight away. But they don't really understand what's involved, how to write a maintainable framework that can be used ongoing, because there's a lot of maintenance and test break as things change, as data changes, as time goes on. So we use a couple of tools. So I've written them by myself, written back-end API test automation harnesses. But with SAP, we primarily use Tricentis, Tosca. We also use Workday. They're sort of the 2 main. Worksoft. Worksoft and Tricentis, Tosca. They're the 2 main products that we use. Look, Tricentis have a partnership with SAP, and so it is quite good. And it is GUI intensive, we'll just say that, rather than be sort of back-end automation. Now, back-end automation is generally more efficient and quicker, but the advantage of the front-end automation is what the users actually do. And SAP, there are a lot of defects found that way. So we do that for the automation. The other thing we look at, obviously, is around test case management. So the products we use for that, and that's, back in the old day, Tester or Mercury would have been the company test director. I mean, that's back in the 90s and early 2000s, but that's now evolved. And Tricentis are probably the leading product there. They have a Q-test product that we use for that, and we have people that manage that. And when you're dealing with an SAP program, when you're executing 4,000 tests, finding 1,000 defects, you can't use Excel or anything like that. And it's very hard to use Jira. Jira is a development tool, not a test management tool.
Sure.
And we might have 400 users who want to test, right, as part of UAT. So trying to manage 400 users, logging into Jira, 4,000 tests, 1,000 defects, these are big problems to solve.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what we manage. So we'll generally we'll say a proper professional product is what we generally use.
Interesting. When you're talking there, I was just going back through my old experiences. You'd be at a client, you might be on a phase 3 or something of the project, and you go, okay, and you just arrive there after phase, 3's kicking off, and you go, well, where's the test from that scenario? Because this is not working. And you go, we're trying to work out why I wasn't getting the data into the analytics environment. I'm going like, why is this not working? And then where are the tests? Are the tests signed off? And can we just run some of those tests to make sure that we can see the data coming through the extractors into data lake? And no, we couldn't find the tests. No one could find the tests. It's quite amazing. So it's crazy that natural, ecosystem or keeping those tests live, because that environment is live. I think have people solved that at the moment? I mean, like, because these ERP environments are never static; they're always getting upgraded.
Yep.
They're always getting, the acquisition company buys or divests. There's always testing happening. Are there people? Do they have a continuous testing program in place of some sort, or am I just naive to think that they haven't done that?
Look, it's a bit of each, to be honest. So,
Yeah.
so generally, what you find, the big programs themselves are pretty good and they're professional, and they know they need to have, well, for audit reasons, but also in order to have decent quality on the project. They
Yeah.
need to have structure and rigor, and they need to have tests, and they need to be updated and improved.
Yeah.
What often happens is, as you said, after a product goes live, there's not that the budget is there. The project's now in BAU. So they don't often update those tests. There are changes made. So those project assets do decay over time. Now, it's really something that we try and say, well, we have assets for the program and how we deliver, but
Yep.
then it's what do we do after go live, and what does that look like? And how do we, I guess, shrink it down or scale it down to something that's manageable going forward? So
Sure.
you can't give BAU 4,000 tests. They're not going to maintain it. But you might say, here are the 100 tests. Here's like your regression suite that you need to manage going forward.
Yeah.
So it's always, how do we push it forward?
Yep.
But the big programs are generally good because they need to have that governance structure in there.
Great.
And that's what we work on. But we also do try and hand over to those BAU or run components of programs to try and hand over something manageable.
Yep.
And the tools are cheap, right? The tools are expensive. And so programs can generally fund it. BAU generally don't want to. And so that's why we need to come up with, sort of other solutions, sort of other innovations to try and help those BAU organizations manage them.
Sure. I think it's a big opportunity. So let's go back to Mark. Mark, you gave us a bit of an overview of transport. I know that was a successful project.
Yep.
How about, don't have to mention names, but, these projects always go off the rails. IT, big programs of work, with a lot of people involved, a lot of personalities, a lot of politics in these machines, and the environments are changing that you're at. Have you ever been called in and, in a disaster and asked to save a project? And, how often has that happened in the last, 10 years?
I'd say, yeah, sorry, I'm laughing because it's almost every program. It's great we celebrate when we actually get it. I start on the program when the program actually is first initiated. So that's actually quite enjoyable to actually be there at the start and then help progress it so it doesn't fall into disarray. There's lots of reasons why the programs can fall away. There's people have written books on this kind of thing. But look, we definitely, myself, and I think Brett, in our careers, as I said, with transport, we were like the third and the fourth test directors to come in, and we planted our flag in the ground and said, this is it. And with the backing of the management team at transport, we were successful. And I can remember the moment the CIO for RMS came in, and he went away for 2 weeks, and he came back and it had gone from red to orange with the program going to green, and he was looking around the room and said, "What's happened? I'll go back on holidays for 2 weeks." But so what happens is you get better organized, you identify the problems. I think that's one of the things that my technique was always go in there and these days they rebadge it and they say, do a 360-degree interview. And basically, I would talk to everyone from top to bottom. I'd talk to the tester or the most junior person on the program, up to the program director and manager, and I get a list of problems, and I would write down the problems and I categorize them, and I'd have a spreadsheet, and on some of the more difficult programs I probably have close to 200 problems, and then I would have it across maybe a dozen different categories. So it could be test environments or test data or lack of requirements or the documentation, the architectural documentation. So basically I would break down the program into all these different areas of problems, and then I'd work out, well, what are the most urgent ones that I can fix now? What are the quick wins? And I just literally start from the 200, and every week I'd be able to knock off 10 to 20 of these problems, and then literally after about a month, things just start to work. And some of the problems, you wake up in the morning, some of these problems you just tick off because they've just dissolved. And so suddenly from having close to 180, 200 problems, you're down to about 60 or 70 in the fifth week, and everyone's feeling happier in the program. That's quite a it's a skill that I built up over time, but it's something I enjoy. I think I do that in life anyway, fixing problems. I think Brett does the same. We're very similar in a lot of ways.
For sure.
So
Yeah, good.
what happens? Yeah. So I think a lot of programs are salvageable. It's just a matter of, I think, having the right people in the right roles. So I'm sorry, what I'd say is that one of the core aspects of when I'm a test manager coming on, it's about setting up the organization structure and putting in the people and then empowering those people to do their jobs. So if I was running testing and I had a team of, let's say, 4 to 6 test managers, I would let them know, what their job is, what's expected from them. Here's a list of the 10 things I expect you to do. And then you obviously you come back to me when you've got a problem or you need to escalate something, come back to me each week and we'll just do a check where we're at. But I'm definitely not a micromanager. I don't feel Brett is either when we've worked.
Sure.
And we tend to empower people and they love that. I think they get a much better outcome. You get a lot more work.
Great. Good style. So just talking about that's a lot of the culture that you're building up in your own team as well must be very similar to that. Brett, do you want to mention a bit about because in professional services, we know culture, because it's a people's business, is really important. So what type of culture are you trying to build there, Brett, in your organization?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I think, look, Mark and I think it's just decent people.
Yeah.
Right. So we don't push people to kill them. Right.
Yep.
We've sort of been through that ourselves, and we realised the best way is to just treat people kindly, treat them nicely, but be upfront about what their expectations are. We've been lucky enough to be able to find good quality people who are also decent people. Right. So once we find decent people, they all want to work together, and everybody wants to work for the shared outcome. What are we trying to deliver? And we create that good environment. So a real team environment. Now, because we're not too big, you can have personal contact with everybody. So everybody knows everybody, right? So if we go up to 50, we double, you get to 100, you start losing a lot of that. But I think so one of the things we've tried to do is stay small, is so that one, we can be nimble, but one, we've actually got all the relationships and we can keep the good people. It is really hard to find good people.
Yeah.
It is really hard and keep them. So a lot of our test directors, have been there 5-6 years with us now, right? So we've got a good group of people, and it's just trying to have a little bit of fun with success as well. And the good thing is, I'd say over the time we've been successful on our programs, and that's what people want to be part of. They want to be part of a successful program, and that's what motivates a lot of people. And we've been able to do that. Now that's also because of the projects we're on, the companies we work with, the leadership teams at those companies, that helps us as well. So it's, we're just a part of, I guess, the success. But the other thing is, I don't know, people say we don't really advertise. So we don't go out and market. All our work is through referrals and things like that. It's people who know us, people who've heard of us, people who want us to come in and solve a problem for them. And that's essentially what we do. So that's why a lot of people probably haven't heard of our company. But we're very specific and niche into, SAP and testing.
For sure. You actually do other testing as well, haven't you done Workday in the past and a few others?
Yeah, we did Workday, big Workday program. So what's interesting is Workday, D365, Oracle, to be fair, they're all pretty similar. The management, strategy, governance are all the same. They're all just large SAP. They have integrations that you need to test. So you need to hook up environments and how data flows and all that type of thing. So middleware layers. So they're all pretty similar solutions. I guess we're stuck with SAP because, one, SAP is just so dominant in the market. There's a lot of upgrade paths. There's all the patches that come out for SAP. And so it's sort of where we fell really initially with SAP. But we did quite a good Workday program at APA Energy.
Yep.
Essential with the SI there. So that, these are the same SIs we sort of see all over the place. And that was probably I'm going to guess an 18-month program. And we actually did some of the functional testing there as well. But we probably had 10 people there for about 18 months.
Yep.
On the APO program. Yeah. So we do other things, but we always sort of pull back towards, I guess, what we know. And that's generally these SAP programs.
Okay, great. Now, I know we're all busy. I know you got hard stops as well. So I've got a few other questions I want to get through. Thanks for that, Brett and Mark. One of the areas that we obviously seen changing right now is AI. AI is becoming a big thing. So when I talk to people in these shows, I talk about innovation. What innovation are they bringing to the market? And I know that you guys, because I've been working with you, have been working on AI solution of some sort and have taken that to market as well, which is fantastic. So, Brett, I'm going to ask you a bit about the innovation that you guys have been working on, and you're putting a lot of effort into that. I think since February, quite a bit of effort into that. What's happening there? Can you share anything with the audience?
Yep. So we've developed a product. It's called IntelliTest. So essentially, what it does, it's an AI solution. Now, look, AI, like everybody, AI doesn't do everything.
Yep.
AI is just part of the solution, and it's a tool.
Yeah.
Right. So like test automation or anything like that, AI is a tool. And so what we've done is we've worked on a couple of theories, multi-model theory, and getting different models to, I guess, quiz each other and check each other's work. But where we're focused on is we look at our core business, and a lot of it's, test cases, creating test cases. And we've been able to develop this, the AI solution IntelliTest to be able to automatically create SAP manual test cases. So a lot of people have gone down the automation route. So everyone goes, oh, we're going to automate, blah, blah, blah. What we've actually done is we've looked at the big programs and go, well, where's all the time? What's taking time on programs? And manually creating thousands of test cases is a huge time, it takes time on programs. So we've actually developed this solution to create, create all these manual test cases for us. And it's sort of like, it's like talking to a 10-year-old, right? So you ask the same question 4 times, and on the 4th time, you'll actually get an answer that's close to the truth, right? And it's just continually how we prop these models. So we've actually developed our own solution that's on our own infrastructure. And that was the other thing. We were at a client, and we said, oh, we've got this solution. And they said, no, you can't use it. We've banned, ChatGPT's banned because we don't trust it. So what we actually did is we went out, we have our own NVIDIA chipset. We've got our own infrastructure, all hosted in Australia. We've got databases in Azure. The chips. So all the calculations of chips stay in our ecosystem. And that was one of the big things we did, right? To be able to solve the security problem first. So we solved that. And then we looked at, okay, now what's the testing problem we need to solve? So we sort of solved them both. And a new client, we've just won a couple of really good deals that are going for all of 2026. And one of them, we actually did a live demo during the presentation of IntelliTest. And they said, are you sure you want to do a live demo?
No one does.
So we did a live demo. And we said, tell me what you want. And they said, give me some sales order entry test scenarios. And we did it. And IntelliTest created 20 test scenarios for a sales order entry SAP, because we have a lot of our IP behind the scenes, 10,000 sample test cases. So it's got all this knowledge that we've built into the solution. And so it was able to do that. And then we asked for some, the client's got business in the US and around the globe. So we actually said, okay, now create 10 negative test scenarios to do with US sales tax, and bang, and out they come. So, okay, we then stopped the demo because it's worked. It worked perfect. We said, okay, let's not push it too far, but it was just good having that. And look, it's the thinking about it. It's also, how does it work? How do we think about it? How can we be more efficient? And that's what we're trying to do. So AI is not going to solve every problem. And it's not, I don't think it's going to take away, certainly what we do, it's not going to take away jobs. But we're trying to work, how do we use it to be better? How do we use it to be more efficient? And certainly we think the manual side of testing, whatever, everybody will say we go to agile, we'll go, automation, all this. SAP programs are very large waterfall programs, and that's how they work. I can't see that changing in the next 20 years. I honestly can't. So we just focus on how do we improve part of that sort of that program in that cycle, and that's what we're focused on within IntelliTest.
Brilliant. I think it's a great idea. You also don't have to go and hire a whole lot of extra people to do work that they don't really want to do. I mean, it sounds like that's a component that no one really wants to do. So there's obviously the value add around that stuff that you got to bring to a client. So I think it's an amazing story. And everyone wants to do innovation, but it's very hard to actually have the time to focus on it. So I just want to commend you guys. Well done on actually building up a product and from scratch and putting the effort in to make it work, and now winning work through that process. And that's a competitive advantage that you'll take to market, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you ever see it sort of, you guys are all onshore, predominantly your team's onshore. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So
correct. All
do you,
onshore.
do you see yourselves be able to compete with offshore now a bit more now because you've got a bit of an AI solution?
Yeah.
And obviously that AI solution will probably extend as you guys get more time to put more innovation into it. Will you start to compete with those offshore type of teams?
So it's really interesting. So the whole onshore offshore model. So testing, to be fair, swings. It's like a roundabout, right? So sometimes it goes onshore, sometimes it's offshore, and these are organizational discussions, and also Australian cultural discussions about our jobs going overseas or not.
For sure.
Certainly for us, though, the management and the governance of these large programs, it's very difficult to do offshore, right? Because you sort of need to be there to run that part of the program. But you're right, the execution side, the technical side, it could be done offshore, but we haven't done that. What we've done is, as Mark said, we've tried to hire some grads or the younger guys and give them a go. We actually compete against a lot of the large offshore clients. So, you look at, the TCS, Wipro, Cognizant, all these Infosys, all these large Indian pure play companies who have a lot of people at their disposal who can do things a lot cheaper than we can.
Yep.
So we don't compete on price. So for us, it's not about price. It's about being efficient and getting a really good job, right? Getting a good job done for the client. And that's sort of where we focus on. And look, we go up against them on the bids, right?
Yeah.
But what we're offering and what the problem we solve is not necessarily we don't do a bulk model of providing 30 testers or 50 testers. We don't. It's not the area we're in. So could AI be offshore? Look, I think it can, but I think the understanding of the project, the understanding of the culture is super important for getting the results out of AI. I've actually watched, so what I did is I watched people prompt AIs where English wasn't their first language. And it was really interesting to see just the structure of how people write sentences when it's not your natural language is really different. And the results were coming back very different. So I was just sort of been studying about how people prompt and how these models work. And so, look, I think for us, we try and set the guardrails. What do we want out of our solution? How do we want to prompt? What are we trying to do? We've set up a lot of work to sort of create all these contexts and I'm going to say nesting of contexts with different products. And I think that's important, right? That we sort of set that and then give access to our staff to go and use the solution. So I don't really see us really being offshore, to be honest. We've spoken about it a lot.
Yep. I think a lot of our clients have, when we talk to them about offshoring in the use of AI, that their strong preference has always been to stay onshore. We don't want to deal with there's a security risk and data issues, security access to the data. So they're just not interested, actually.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, let's move, while you're talking, Mark, let's talk a bit about what trends, do you see in the IT professional services industry? Do you see any trends besides AI happening? A bit more on that. Do you want to talk a bit about that yourself? Is there anything else you see happening?
It's a really good question. So the trends are, I think there's been a trend back to doing more test automation. And we see that in our existing client base over the last few years. People talk about it, but weren't really interested in investing in putting money there. And the last couple of years, they're highly interested in talking about it, and they're now putting the money there. So, and they're asking us to help them. So that's why we now have a strong test automation offering, and we have an offering not only within the program whilst the program's running, but we also now, once the program finishes and we move on, we have an ongoing application management service with test automation where we run
like managed services environment for ongoing. That's great.
And so they see a lot of value in that. our team, we ask them from time to time, how's it going? What's when you run these tests, are you finding things? And sure enough, they say absolutely. Yesterday we found 2 defects in production, and so we let the client know, and they're actually ecstatic. I mean, normally
Great.
it's hard to get too excited about testing, but in finding defects, but
Yeah, for sure.
you never
It
know.
shows people, the value that you bring. If you're picking up a
Yep.
problem or two, or debug or whatever, a bug, it shows the client that's you're actually worth it having you there. Safety
Agreed.
guard.
So the automation and that tools, I think our company in particular, we sell more Tricentis Q-Test product than anyone else in Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Every client we go to, we're open-minded, and there's other products that we do use and have used in the past, but for the large enterprise programs, this product in particular is the market leader. And once we bring it in, we show them how to use it and how to configure it and how to administer it correctly for the benefit of not just the program, but also the wider enterprise. And so what tends to happen is, as a I guess trend is that the clients are picking up on the ease of use of this product and the value that it adds not only to an SAP program, but to all their other programs. So even when we're gone and they're still using that product, whereas in the past I've seen a lot of these test management tools that sit there, they gather dust, and you told the story about where are all the test cases, where's all the test results. Yeah. Q-Test is such a great tool that it's super easy for anyone, business users, to use. So that's a legacy that we leave with clients, and that I think it's gathering its own momentum. It's now become, it's not, the conversation on what tooling is required is always happens up front, and those conversations are getting easier and easier, and the client's seeing more value in spending, $100,000 to $300,000-$400,000 on some of these tools. So I guess the third trend in the marketplace would be, I think there's a move back from a lot of offshoring. I think that Brett talked about swings and roundabouts. Definitely, I think the market's come back to getting people onshore, getting people in the office. I think there's a lot of value being seen, having people meeting, eye to eye around the old kitchen or the water cooler, as they say. I also agree. I like to work from home as much as the next person, but when we go into the office, I think I'm less productive on my output, but I'm way 10 times more productive on engagement with individuals and sharing ideas and understanding the nature of programs or problems. So now the major programs that we're winning, they're asking for people to come in at least 3 times a week. So I think that's going to continue. I think most people will work from home either on the Mondays and the Fridays, but I'll see you in the office on Tuesday though.
Yeah, can't go to the beach and surf on Monday and Fridays because everyone else is in the water. But I think that's a really good point there, Mark. With these big programs of work, and people are just trying to making sure they get the right value and making sure. I think you can only solve problems in person sometimes. So you're big problem solvers. There's problems happening all the time. So you've got to be connected to people and communicating effectively, and you can only sort of brainstorm that activity if you're actually in the office.
Yeah, what's also happening though, Ian, I think the other trend I've noticed is a move away from the one company to solve all the problems into having specialist organizations solve their part of the problem. So we look at us, we solved the testing problem for these large programs, but then we see the same companies on the large programs. So who's solving the security and access problem for these programs? What about the data migration problem? What about the change management problem? So these are all specialist areas that what we've sort of noticed is that the programs, rather than getting the one company to do everything, they're getting smaller specialist organizations in to essentially hold each other accountable. And I think that's it. I think it's really hard for the large organizations to see through what they're doing and work out, are we delivering a quality product? And if I'm running a program for an organization, you want to make sure the quality's there and everyone's keeping each other accountable. So I think the move to smaller boutique organizations and small, up to 100, 200, couple hundred people, to solve individual problems is certainly where we're seeing the market go, rather than the larger organizations doing everything.
Perfect. Okay, so one final question for you both. It's the same question. I'm going to go to Mark this time. Give you a bit of a breather there, Brett. What advice would you give to someone who's aspiring IT professional business owner who wants to become a a business owner, and obviously, Mark, you've done this. You've been doing this since 2016. So, what one piece of advice or two pieces of advice that stick out that you could give them?
Yeah, there's no one or two pieces of advice. I mean, I love giving advice for free, even when they're not asking. People's not asking, but it's a journey. I think that the secret to our success is being in partnership together. We both enjoy each other's company. We work together as a team. We're not 100% alike. We're probably 60-70% overlap, and 30%, let's call it, different. So I think neither of us, would have been successful in business without each other, and neither of us probably would have enjoyed being in business without having a partner. So number one thing for me has been working with Brett in partnership, and we battle the projects and the programs and all these issues, not only from a delivery perspective, but from a business management and strategy perspective. So share the journey.
Yeah.
That would be my message.
Brilliant. It's a great answer, because a lot of co-founders, and they say 3 founders is even better than 1 founder, and you can imagine why. The 1 founder has no one to lean on and second guess and bounce ideas. When you verbalize something, you actually start to think about it properly as well. When you're trying to verbalize a challenge you've got to someone else, just alone, and you actually solve the problem yourself. So that's a great piece of advice. Thanks a lot for that, Mark. Brett, just one things.
I think you got to stand for something. So you got to work out what is the business, or what are you going to stand for? So we've often, you come back to, and when we try and go outside of our area, we come back, no, what are we doing? What problem are we solving? And what do we stand for as a business? So we stand for testing, test management, governance of SAP programs, and that's what we focus on. And so I think it's very easy to get distracted, because you think, if I do this, I can get lots of people, lots of money, I can do this. But you've just got to stand for something. And if the market knows that's what you stand for and you're good at it, eventually the work will come.
For sure. Brilliant. Well, thanks very much, Brett and Mark. I really appreciate your time today on the show. It was an awesome insight into how successful your business is. And I know it's going great guns, and you're probably fully booked, I think, until middle of next year, or even to 2027. So
into 2027, we're fully booked. Yeah, with
fully
work.
Booked. It just shows you. I mean, that just shows you what type of business you have. It is a phenomenal business. So well done on that. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks, Ian.
Cheers.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on IT Mastermind Talks. Don't miss out on our next episode. Hit the follow button and stay updated. Want to be our next podcast guest? Contact us and share your expertise with our audience. Visit www.itmastermindtalks.com for more information.